Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be talking about Uranus into Gemini, and I'm going to be looking at it, first of all, this fascinating planet, what it means, what it does, how it behaves, and then I'm going to be looking at it in the individual signs and houses so that you all get to have a bit of a better idea what it means for you personally. But before I get into that, just a couple of things. First, just to say, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. And even if you're not new to my channel, would much appreciate the likes because it helps to grow the channel. And the second is, I'm going to be starting an astrology course, and I'm going to be beginning this course on September the 27th this year. It's going to be in 3 parts. So the first part, the building blocks, is the real structure of astrology, how you need to know, or what you need to know in order to be able to interpret a natal chart. The second module, that's going to be in January the 17th it starts, and that's going to be intermediate, and we're going to be looking at progressions and transits and solar returns and things that kind of take our interpretation into a much more sophisticated kind of way of how we would look at it. And then the third module, advanced, that will be looking at some techniques, synastry, the astrology of relationships, looking at how we do that, the composite chart, all those parts of relationship astrology. We're going to look at harmonics and political astrology. So it's a fully comprehensive course, and whether you're just interested in knowing about astrology because you're interested in personal growth and you want to look at what it all means for you and life, or whether you really want to take this seriously now, you want to learn how to do it, want to become a competent astrologer, you want to write about it, talk about it, blog about it, whatever you may do, this is the course for you, really. And I've written all details that you will need to know on my website, astrolutely.com. And if you go to the courses tab, right on the right end of the homepage, then you'll get all the details. And I hope to see you there. It's very exciting for me. I haven't taught in this way before. I've always taught one-on-one with people, but now I'm going to widen it out and a few of you there at the same time. Okay, so onward, Uranus in Gemini. Well, Uranus enters Gemini on the 7th of July this year at 7:38 UTC. It's a really pretty big moment because Uranus hasn't been in Gemini since, well, over 80 years, almost 84 years. So it's a big deal. And it's only going to go through the very early degrees to begin with. It's going to come back into Taurus in November and then go fully into Gemini next April. And I will be doing another video on Uranus in Gemini then, for 2 reasons. First, because it's such a vast topic. There's so much to say about it. But I think also we'll be able to look at what effects we think we've already experienced with Uranus in Gemini, because often it's at the very beginning of a sign, the very end of one sign, the very beginning of the other, that we get this kind of concentrated effect of the planet and the sign. And of course, we've had a lot of changes recently, Pluto into Aquarius, Saturn into Aries just recently, Neptune into Aries. And all this is really part of this very important picture. And I have talked about this on some of my other videos and in my writings as well, that while there is a way to look at what's going on in the world right now, we think, oh, well, all these big planets, slow moving planets that really trace humanity's evolution, they're all going into different signs. And that's kind of the reason that we're experiencing such extreme events. But it's not just that. It's because they're all starting at the very beginning. They're all hovering around about 1, 2, 0, 29 degrees of signs. And so we've got Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter and Saturn. And what's happening is that they're all resonating with each other. And you can imagine that, I think, if you think about things in the orchestra, if you've got all the strings and the woodwind and the brass and timpani all playing one note at one time, it would be really, really loud. It would resonate through the symphony hall. And my goodness, this is what's happening in the solar system. Why we've got everything happening all at once everywhere. That whole thing, that's because of the relationship between Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and also with Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is going to be moving away from that point. In fact, probably by the time this video is up, which will be on the I'm trying to think, probably the 27th of June, it'll still be in range, but it will be moving out of that cluster. But of course, you don't need me to tell you what's been going on. It's been absolutely massive. And fortunately, I talked about this before the summer solstice. So everything kind of took off on the summer solstice. And so we were able to test out the astrology and just see how meaningful and it was in terms of what happened. So, yes, so let me get back to the topic in hand, which is planet Uranus. Now, when we start to understand a planet, and certainly the planets beyond Saturn, because right up until 1781, Saturn was the end of everything. That was it. There was nothing further, nothing beyond Saturn. And then Uranus popped up in 1781, and suddenly everything was like, wow, everything's changed. And Uranus is indeed the planet of change. It sort of changes and opens our eyes to new possibilities. It kind of doesn't fit the bill. We have to rethink all sorts of things we thought before with Uranus. And we can do that in our own lives when we get a Uranus transit. And of course, this is what we did effectively when Uranus was discovered. Now, I've got a picture of the planet here, and I think it's quite interesting to look at it. You'll see that the equator, so to speak, of the planet is vertical. And, most equators are horizontal, and all the planets, including Earth, go round the sun with our equator vertically, horizontally, but not Uranus. Uranus is flipped up on its side, so to speak, and it has a very quirky, strange movement. So that's one of the reasons that we take away, if you like, from planet Uranus, that it doesn't work like any of the other planets. It's completely different. Uranus also has 28 moons. That's an awful lot of moons. Some are in the sort of main area, some are called irregular, and some are minor. But the interesting thing is that they have all been called by Shakespearean characters. I think there's another one that isn't, but they're called things like Titania, Oberon, Ariel, Umbriel, and all those fairy creatures, again, really suit the idea of Uranus, rather a magical planet. And you will probably hear that in the music that introduced this particular video to you. It's kind of, oh, whoa, this is odd, this is unusual, I feel kind of weird about this. And the fairy tale characters, these capricious fairies, are very much, aligned with Uranus as well. Now, Uranus's orbit, apart from the fact it's erratic, predictably erratic, it takes about 84 years to completely go around the sun, which means it takes 84 years to go around your chart. I'm going to come on to that a little bit later. But I wanted to look at a couple of other things which tell us quite a lot about Uranus. And the first thing is what was going on at the time that Uranus was discovered. Well, it was a time of revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution. There were big changes in the way, people were moving off the land, machinery, industry was really taking over. So we got this complete change of social conditions and also new ways of living and looking at the world. And shortly after Uranus was discovered, in fact, uranium was discovered, and it was called uranium because of planet Uranus. So, and just as a by the by here, Neptune and Pluto also called after those on that scale. So we have Neptunian and we have plutonium, and all together uranium, plutonium and Neptunian are all part of the nuclear story. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at these outer planets, Neptune, Uranus and Pluto, as they are not only in literal terms capable of extraordinary feats, and let's not think about blowing ourselves up so much, but the benefits they give, as well as when we think about other aspects of not exactly everyday life, these things that are beyond, they go beyond. And I'll say a little bit more about this in regard to Uranus shortly. So the whole idea of revolution is very much connected to planet Uranus, is what we understand about it. Now, in myth, Uranus was the sky god, and he was both the son and the husband of Gaia, Earth. And of course, that's a little complex, a little bit unusual, unconventional at the very least. And he fathered the Titans with Gaia, of which Saturn was one. And I don't want to get too much into this myth because it kind of takes us away from the Uranus that we want to talk about. But if we take away from this the idea that Uranus is a sky god, I think we get nearer the idea again, rather like all the fairy characters, the moons are called, that we are in kind of magical, heavenly kind of territory with Uranus. And like anything that is beyond understanding and you can't really capture it properly, it has that kind of magical sense to it. It has something that is beyond understanding. We incorporate it, which I'll talk about shortly. And of course, right now, we are beginning to really get a lot nearer manifesting Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, most certainly in terms of artificial intelligence, which is a combination of all of them. What they represent, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So we are beginning to enter that field. We are beginning to connect with these planets in a way that we've never connected before. But by and large, when we look or we're thinking about astrology, then what we're looking at is the position of Uranus, where it is in the circle of the horoscope, and 12th house, 8th house, wherever it may be, and the connections it's making to the personal planets and the angles of the chart. That's ascendant, descendant, IC, and midheaven. And that's how we bring it into our personal experience. We get the Uranus effect by the fact that our personal planets connect to it. And also, of course, this is what happens in transit when Uranus is moving around our chart and connecting to something in our birth chart. Then again, we get the Uranus experience. Now, another way of looking at Uranus, and by that getting to understand how this planet works a bit, what it means, is that I'm one of those astrologers who thinks of Uranus as the higher octave of the sun. I mean, there are different views about this, and not everybody thinks the same, but to me it makes a lot of sense, because Uranus is the higher self. The sun, if you like, is our self, our small self, our identity. And that way we can see those two things together. But we can also see it in the way that the sun is the center of our solar system. It is the sun from which we get light and heat. And of course, Uranus is the great light bringer of the planetary team. So there are associations in this particular way with looking at Uranus as the higher octave. And I really love that about Uranus, because again, we look at Leo, which is ruled by the sun, and we think about the solar self with Leo, how important it is for Leo to be expressive, personality, creatively, all those kind of things. And when we come to Aquarius, the opposite sign, its modern ruler is Uranus. And so here we come to that higher octave again, the idea that Uranus, in terms of Aquarius, is thinking always about something that's beyond the personal, that is light years ahead, and it is caught up in breaking ground in a kind of electric space kind of way. So it does make a certain sense to me, the idea that the sun and Uranus being the higher octave of the sun. And of course, one of the things about a Uranus transit, especially when we look at the Uranus-opposition, the Uranus-square, Uranus to your sun, then we get this feeling that part of you that you haven't expressed, your real self, something trying to come out that you haven't expressed, is a very important facet of this particular Uranus transit. So where do I want to go from here? Yes, other things about what Uranus brings. We think about change, diversity. Uranus is the planet of technology. It is the planet of the digital world. So when we get a very strong Uranus transit, there's often something related to whether it's space with the takeoff of certain rockets and getting to know more about what's in space. And I think certainly with Uranus in Gemini, because Gemini is a sign of intelligence. So we look to seek what intelligence we can find in space. So that's another thing really to take into consideration with Uranus. Anything technology-wise, anything to do with the digital world, computers, phones, washing machines, everything is digital these days. So there will be some groundbreaking stuff going on in Gemini, especially as Gemini is also about social media and publishing and travel, space travel, ordinary travel. And I think during the time Uranus will be in Gemini, which will take us through the next 7 years, I think Concorde may be back with us. And of course, Concorde was the plane that went through the, it broke through the sound barrier, made those sonic booms. So the idea that that might also be coming in again for us to, travel, perfectly ordinary people traveling at the speed of sound, crossing that barrier. It's quite extraordinary. And we can expect a lot of that as Uranus goes through Gemini. A lot of things we never thought we'd see before, hear before, or happen before. So a couple of things that I want to talk about here. Remember, I talked about the cycle of, or the orbit of Uranus being 84 years. 84 years ago, Uranus in Gemini, 1941, World War II, Pearl Harbor. And that's when America joined into World War II. And the interesting thing is here, and actually to be very specific, Uranus had gone into Gemini earlier in the year, 1984. By the time Pearl Harbor happened, which I think was the 7th of December, 1941, it had slipped back into Taurus again. And because it's 84 years ago, America is about to have its Uranus, well, it'll be its third or fourth, I don't know, I'm not very good at math, third or fourth Uranus return. But it's interesting that the last time Uranus was in Gemini, that Uranus return, Uranus is about 8 of Gemini, I think, in the USA chart. Um, just recently, when Uranus was about 29 degrees, 28, 29 degrees of Taurus, of course, we saw the use of those fantastic bombs, those MOPs. I've forgotten what they stand for, but they're bunker buster bombs, capable, never been used before, quite historic. And you could say that at that particular point, America joined in the war. And I think that's quite an interesting resonance with what happened 84 years ago. Of course, there'll be other things. And when I do my next Uranus in Gemini next year, in the spring next year, we'll probably be able to talk about what we can already relate to as being significant and especially to do with Uranus in Gemini. Which brings me neatly on to the idea that if you are 84 years old, then you are about to have your Uranus return. And when we think about Uranus, remember what I was saying earlier about the idea of aspects of our existence, aspects of ourself that we have suppressed, repressed. They bubble up, and situations cause us to have these kind of what seem to be kind of abreactions. They are strange kind of ways of reacting to things, or we might suddenly start to do things very differently. And it's sort of, we can't control Uranus. It's impossible to control Uranus. So things that we've suppressed tend to come up. So you can imagine in a funny kind of way at 84, you're getting a kind of rebirth, not in quite the same way as a Pluto opposition or a Pluto square, but in a funny kind of way, it's sort of like, I haven't done this before. This has not been this way before. I'm having to learn about a whole lot of things that I never knew before. So Uranus, in his role as the light bringer, as the awakener, is awakening you to a new state of existence. And that can have many forms, can't it? There can be all sorts of reasons why life is different. And I'm not going to necessarily go into them, but at 84 years old, sometimes, we have health problems, health issues. There could be other things like moving out of your home, moving somewhere else. So we get those things that are sort of a little bit age related, if you like. But then there are other things, depending on, who you are, where you are in life, that could be a really exciting period. You may travel somewhere you've never been to before. You may decide to take up something you've never done before. And so Uranus always wants us to go beyond. It's a very good statement, isn't it? To go beyond, to stretch ourselves, to know that there's something that we haven't thought of. Just like, scientists and astronomers thought Saturn was the end of everything. When Uranus came along, they had to completely change their ideas. The whole cosmos had to change. And that's what Uranus does. It says, look, you've run out of road here. The world, your life is much more diverse than you think. And so embrace it, go forward into it. Now, in a way, those of you who are that age that, you only get one Uranus return in a lifetime, make the most of it. The Uranus opposition, that happens round about age 45. And I just want to give you the years that specifically when it relates to 0 degrees to 1 to 2 degrees of Gemini. And that's going to be 1980 to 1981. If you were born during that time, then you're at the Uranus opposition. And the Uranus opposition it often comes at the same time as the Saturn opposition as well. So, and sometimes the not Pluto square, but we get a lot of things at the same time. The Neptune square, sorry. And that's a really stir-crazy period. Everything just goes, haywire. But again, it's aimed at rerouting, realigning you with your destiny and getting rid of things you don't need anymore, and looking forward in life to things that are appropriate for the you who you have become. So the Uranus opposition is often a time when marriages break up, people walk out of jobs, people throw up their lives and go and live on small islands and forage. It's like a complete life change. And obviously, the best way to handle a Uranus opposition is to be yourself, awoken to the new life that you need and the things that are restricting you and aren't part of really the who you've become. I mean, they might have been perfectly acceptable for the you who you were at one time, but you are someone else now and things need to be different. So if you can embrace that and make those changes, that's the right thing to do. But more often than not, things just break up. So marriages break down without your say-so. You get fired from a job, you can't pay the mortgage and you have to go and rent somewhere in the Outer Hebrides. I mean, it could be anything that happens to you that forges great changes in your life. And at the time, we're often very destabilized by Uranus opposition, but we come to see as time goes by how it was the very, very best thing for us. We needed this big change in our lives, and that's what we've got. Now, there's also the Uranus square, and we usually get two of these in our lives. One at age 64, around 64, and the other at 21, 22, something like that. So if you were born 1960 to 1961 or 2002 to 2003, then you're experiencing the Uranus square, and we'll do into next year as well. And if we take the younger group, first of all, around 21, 22, and it's, these things are sort of a little bit blurred at the edges, even though when we get a Uranus transit, it can be right to the day, like, wow, that happened right on the day. It can be like that. It's the only planet that works that way. But if we think about where we are in life, yes, Uranus can be an epiphany, but often at that age, 21, 22, we are at university well, let's take that first of all and think about it. And you may suddenly decide, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't want to be in university. I want to be out working. I want to be traveling. I want to be doing something. This is not going to work. So at the very least, you might change course, or you might, you might drop out. That's just an example. Or you might suddenly get married to your fellow student. These are sort of Uranian things that happen at the first Uranus square. I left the Royal Ballet Company on my Uranus square. I just walked out of the company, broke my contract. And there's a lot more to it than that. Don't want to sound like a complete idiot. But circumstances tend to create the breeding ground for you to say, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And I think if we're parents of that age group, I think we have to be prepared for the fact that they won't want to do what we thought they were going to do, or they will want to do things in a way that won't go with your expectations and your view of them. So that's very important. And if you are listening to me and you're going through your first Uranus square, look, it is a bumpy ride. And, you will feel as though you're a square peg in a round hole, and you want to do something different from what you don't like the world you're in. You want to change it. You want things to be very different. Those are correct feelings. And in a way, with Uranus, you always have to obey that idea of going beyond, of doing the unconventional, doing the things that aren't expected. So that's going with your Uranus as opposed to fighting it and trying to stay the same. Now, of course, 1960-61 births, your math again, about 64, let's put it around that age. That's an age of rebellion. And I think as we're looking now, we see these I think Madonna is actually older than 64. I don't know where she is, but she certainly doesn't look like the 64-year-olds I used to know when I was younger. And a lot of people are breaking those barriers and living life and doing things that that you wouldn't expect somebody who was retired to do. And of course, the age of retirement itself is stretching and stretching and stretching in countries. So things are changing as we go, but there's still that period of Uranus square Uranus at that age where you do want to say, I don't want to be put in a box. I'm different. I am myself, and I want to be treated like a person, not like a number, not like, I don't want to fit into this box and that box. So these are very typical expressions of Uranus in its cycle. Uranus square Uranus, Uranus opposition, Uranus return. So I also want to look at some very simple ways of thinking about Uranus. And I've said this on many occasions, and some of you probably already know about it. I talk about the 3 Bs with Uranus. So we get breakthroughs, breakups, and breakdowns. These are 3 B words that go very, very well with Uranus. And if you think about it, there are 7 years in which Uranus will be in Gemini, and it's not going to give its same message day after day after day. It's not going to be like that. You're only going to get the Uranus effect when it connects with a planet or point in your natal chart. And in 7 years, you're not going to get an identikit experience. Every time Uranus connects with the sun, with Mercury, whatever else it may be connecting with, it's always going to be different. So you're going to get some very short, sharp shocks, but you're also going to get some absolutely brilliant breakthroughs and changes that happen to you in a rather wonderful way. You'll get the full gamut in 7 years. And looking at when Uranus is going to be activating your natal planets, and this really goes with squares and oppositions and conjunctions. The trines aren't going to do a lot. They're just not. It's background music, so don't expect anything remarkable. But if you've got an opposition coming, Uranus opposing one of your planets, or angles, for instance, ascendant, descendant axis, you've got Uranus on the ascendant, or Uranus on the descendant, that's going to have a direct effect on relationships. So either you're going to meet some absolutely crazy, unusual people, you're going to start falling in love with people who are 20 years younger than you, or people who are 20 years older than you, or they come from a distant part of the world, and you're going to give up and go and do something extremely, random with people. So Uranus will have an effect on your relationships. Well, Uranus coming up to Mars, for instance, you would definitely have to be a little bit more careful with your movements, because Mars is about action, it's about desire, it's about conflict, all those things. So when Uranus comes to Mars, things break out. You've got problems, and if you're not focused, you have accidents, and you have all sorts of other things that, interfere with the smooth running of life. Although, of course, the opportunity for breakthrough as well is still there. So that's how Uranus will work. And of course, if you join my course, then you'll hear more about that. We're going to devote quite a lot of time to the planets in their cycles and their transits as part of the intermediate course. So let me just check my list, make sure that I've given you everything that I wanted to give you. Oh yes, I had a few things a few dates that I think might be interesting. And that is, let me just look at my notes here, because I want to get this right. The periods when Uranus is very strong, very active, and you can look at that in terms of it happening in your own life and to you, or you can think about what's going on in the world, what's going on in your country, what's going on in the world stage. So we need to look at the mid-September period. We need to look around the 6th and 7th of September. 2 reasons here. Uranus is stationary, retrograde on the 6th of September, and it's followed within hours by a total lunar eclipse. And when you get more than one thing happening at the same time, that becomes a period of interest. And as you'll see when I go through your charts individually, and what I will put up at this time, I'll put up a general chart right now, which shows you Uranus and its relationship with Pluto and with Saturn and Neptune. And I've also put the nodes in there as well. And the reason the nodes are important is that's where eclipses are occurring. And when you get eclipses happening at the same time as important Uranus developments, Uranus transits, then you know that this is going to be a period of great change, upset, and some very, very unusual conditions indeed. If we go forward from there, we see Uranus opposing Mars on the 4th of November, and there's a full moon within hours of that. And full moons bring matters to a head. And this is a time whenever we've got Uranus, we've got explosive situations. We've got lightning strikes. Now, these are all metaphors. But if you go with the metaphors, it covers all the sorts of incidents that may happen at that time. So that's another period when we get to observe what Uranus has to offer us. Another period in November, we can almost say that November is Uranus's month, because between the 8th and 25th of November, there's a whole string of Uranian and other events. We've got Uranus heading back into Taurus, Mercury turns retrograde, Jupiter turns retrograde, and both Mercury, of course, being retrograde, is opposing Uranus, and the Sun is opposing Uranus. So my goodness, we're going to get some very interesting kind of news stories and the potential for change, for things to sort of happen very quickly, suddenly, whether we're in those breakups or breakthrough zones. That's what we need to look for when I'm giving you those dates. So let me get on with things. Let me start to look at this change of sign for Uranus and what it means for you in terms of your sun sign or your rising sign. And before I get into that, I know still a lot of you, but of course people are coming new to my channel all the time and aren't used to the way I do things. But I think the perspective of Uranus in Gemini from your sun sign is valid. The sun is the center of the solar system. If we look at the sun as the center of our chart in a way, then its distance from where Uranus is, what the house is, that's going to be valid. It's going to give you an expression of what this transit is going to be about. But also, if you know the exact degree of your rising sign, then you'll know where Uranus is. And at the moment, we're looking at Uranus in the very early degrees. So we're looking at, 0, 1, and 2 of the signs. So you need to check the house cusps of your natal chart to make sure where those early degrees are. And you can also listen to the interpretation that goes with that rising sign. Not the moon sign. I think in Vedic astrology, that's the Hindu system of astrology, then the moon, you can look at the moon as an ascendant and figure out where things are from that. But that's not Western traditional astrology. That's why what your moon sign is really has nothing to do in terms of where Uranus is and how it's going to react. So let's waste no more time and let's get on with it. And our first sign is Gemini, of course. Uranus is coming into your sign. So let's have a look at what things look like. And as you can see from this circle of the horoscope, all I've drawn in here is Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto, and the nodal axis. And because Uranus will be in Gemini. Gemini is a mutable sign. The nodal axis is in Pisces. Virgo at the moment are mutable signs. So depending on where those degree areas are, they are going to be part of the Uranus story, which is why I put them in. And often with eclipses, we have fated developments. We have game-changing events. So that's why I have drawn them in. And the eclipse patterns at the moment, Gemini, are working for you in the 10th, 4th house. So we're on home and family at the one end, the foundations of the future, the roots of life. And on the other end, we've got things to do with your ambitions, things to do with your career, your place in the world. So these eclipses are having a pretty important effect. And we're about halfway through this cycle. We've got next year, part of next year to go as well. And again, coming back to that September period, Gemini, that's going to be a game changer for a lot of the signs of Gemini. So we think about Uranus in your sign. And a little earlier on, I talked about how Uranus brings out aspects of ourselves that we've suppressed. We've pushed them down and said, either that's, I don't want to express that because it's not conventional, or I'm just not happy with that. I don't want to do it. But Uranus says, look, this is impossible. You can't keep the genie in the bottle. It's got to come out. And once it's out, it's out. And it's very personal. The first house, your sign, your sun sign, Uranus is personal. And it can mean that you undergo a change, and this might be quite observable to other people. You may change your appearance quite dramatically. You may change the way you live and the choices you make and the way you live and interact with other people. There will be changes. You are not the same person that you once were. And the first house and our sun sign being everything to do with who we are and what we want personally out of life, then Uranus is going to change this. Uranus is either going to awaken you to the kind of life you could have, and that it's attainable if you make the effort. But it can, of course, also upset things for you so that you have no choice but to look for a new way of living or a new way of being in this world. Obviously, we can look at the practical elements of Uranus in your sign, and that means really embracing all Uranian things. So embracing the digital world, maybe working in it, having a job in technology. But, whatever age you are, the world is a digital place now. And, getting to know more about gadgets and gizmos and software, this is a really, really good thing to do with Uranus in Gemini. Uranus in your first house, Uranus in your sun sign. Now, there will be changes. Whenever Uranus gets to your sun, then something changes. It can feel as though the rug is pulled out from underneath you. You didn't have any choice in what's happened. But of course, you have to adapt to the new. And if there's one thing about Gemini, is that you are a variety seeking sign. You like change. You don't like things to be same old, same old. But of course, that works when you make the decision, hey, I'm going to throw all this up and do something else. That's your decision. But when someone else does it to you, it's not the same. And that is almost certainly something that happens when Uranus is moving through your sign, because it's got to forge growth in some way. It's got to make you aware of a different direction to go in. It's got to make you aware of the things that you need to be doing and aware of the things that you've been doing which are no longer appropriate. You've run out of road with Uranus. Something in your life has run out of road, and it is time really to get on a new path. But I can't, stress enough this idea that it is to do with your appearance as well. And whether you voluntarily change your appearance and, you decide to have pink hair or, whatever you may change, other people will think you've changed. And that's because something new is struggling to be born in you. And in the same way that when we're feeling really happy and we're well, we look great for ourselves. But when we're stressed out and we're unwell, we look terrible, don't we? We wonder if we'll ever look the same again. And so that the idea that our psyche has a lot to do with our external look is in there. So the psychic changes that you'll be going through, the new things that you're exposed to, the shocks, the surprises, all of that is going to change you. And it's going to show. It's going to show in your appearance. But let's be excited about this Uranus transiting your own sign, because it's going to open up the world to you. It's not going to close it down. It's only going to close down those things that aren't part of your journey anymore. So look forward to this Uranus transit. Look forward to being enlightened, and keep remembering that Uranus is your light bringer. So if we come now to Cancer, well, of course, Gemini is your preceding sign, and it, in solar terms, it designates the beginning of the 12th house. So Uranus has entered the 12th house, and it's the same for you if you know Uranus is coming into your 12th house. And the 12th house is an area of preparation. Preparation meets opportunity when Uranus will enter Cancer, and that won't be for another 7 years. So you've got 7 years of things going on before you can say manifest. But a Uranus transit here can be very interesting indeed, because it's almost as though you want to retreat at times, and you want to retreat for very specific reasons. It could be that you want to study something, you want to go on a spiritual retreat, you want to develop your spirituality, you want spiritual experiences, you want to feel your spirituality. You don't just want to think about it in terms of, just intellectually. You want to experience it. And sometimes these things happen. And during the time Uranus is moving through the 12th house, you might have some really extraordinary experiences. You might go out of your body. You might have big dreams, lucid dreams, that you're consciously aware within your dreams, able to manipulate what's going on in your dreams. Or even if you can't get that far, the dreams are greatly meaningful, and you will use the information in your dreams to make changes in your real life. There is a bond here, I think. A lot of times with Uranus in the 12th, we want to sort of be part of a spiritual community. Now, I know you might think that's sort of more 11th house, but you know what? It's 12th house as well. It's like our spiritual experience may be unique, and it may be our own journey, if you like. But being in the company of others who are also witnessing, experiencing, going beyond the levels and where they've never gone before in terms of spiritual growth and spiritual experiences. I mean, there's something comforting in doing that with a group. And let's not forget, Uranus rules Aquarius, and so there is this idea of the tribe, the community, which can have an effect in the 12th house as well. Now, we can also be very practical and think, well, the 12th house, as opposed to the 6th house, has a lot to do with the systems, the engine of our life. And when we think about the engine of life, that has to do with how our life runs, how it functions. So it can have to do with work, the money we make, the routines in our lives, but it's also health, the health system, our health system. So you put Uranus here and you get changes. So you need to be more alert to changes within your body, changes within your mind, changes within your perception, because these could be signs that something is wrong or something needs to be addressed. So we're thinking about mental health, we're thinking about physical health, we're thinking about dental health, all sorts of things to do with the health and spiritual health of who we are. And Uranus is both an awakener, but also it can be a red light. It can show you where things are going wrong. But in many ways, and I like the idea that it takes a long time for Uranus to move through a particular area of your chart. And when we think about the 12th house, which is so mystical and so spiritual, the idea that it's going to take a long time to go through unusual kind of out-of-body experiences, we need time to absorb that. But in a way, as Uranus moves through the 12th house on its way to come into Cancer, and your first house, your sun sign, whatever that may be, then you're going to be able to start to really live it to the full. So you are living your spiritual experience, and the changes that have happened to you, then those are going to be lived out when Uranus gets into Cancer. Now, if we look at Leo, for you, Uranus is entering the 11th house, and the 11th house is its home territory because Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, and Aquarius rules the 11th house. One of the things I think about Uranus coming in to this area is that it has a relationship with what's been happening while Uranus has been in Taurus, or Uranus has been in the 10th house. This is a period of change in the sense of your career, your objectives, your aspirations, all sorts of things to do with your material world. So there've been changes over those previous 7 years. From 2018, you experienced changes. So it may be that you've done very well, and that a lot of the changes that have come into your life have, you've gone upwardly mobile. They're good, but there's an equal chance that things really collapsed at a certain point, and that you were maybe flailing for a little while as you try to figure what path you needed to get on. So the importance of Uranus coming into the 11th house is that whereas before what you were doing might have been what you were doing to survive, what you were doing to be accepted, what you were doing to sort of make the wheels go round, so to speak, in terms of your place in the world. Let's use all those 10th house expressions. When it comes to the 11th house, it isn't about survival and all of that anymore. It's about fulfillment. It's about, what are the things in my life that I'm yearning for? What is it that I'm not happy with? What is it that I need to change? And this area, this 11th house, is the one where we can suddenly decide to walk away from a life that we've known for a long time and do something completely different. It's like The Good Life. Do you remember that series with Felicity and Richard in that all those years ago, where they turned their suburban house into a kind of new age farm? Goats and things. Well, that's very 11th house. That's Uranus in the 11th house. You know what? I want to live sustainably, and not just sustainably. So I'm eating organic and I'm, all of that. It's a lifestyle. And it's even more than that, in that you want a community that feels the same way. And that, in a sense, is finding your tribe as well, because you want to be in a place with people who share the same philosophy. So don't be surprised if in the next 7 years you suddenly decide, I want to get out of town. I want to get a small cottage in the country, or you know what, I want to live somewhere totally different and I want to live off the land. It's as though you want to change. And Aquarius really is about, it's a bohemian kind of energy. It's doing things differently. it's being very altruistic, it's humanitarian, it's all those things. So it's also an awakening to the fact that we all have footprints, that we might think sometimes that there's nothing we can do about what's going on in the world, but actually all of us have a part to play. And that realization, and maybe in the early degrees of Gemini, that realization comes to you more strongly of, yes, you know what? I've got to change my life. I've got to change my lifestyle. I've got to do things that are beneficial for the planet. I want to actually do things that help my fellow man. I want to stand up for humanitarian rights. So it's Uranus can awaken you to the activist within, to the self-sufficient person you are within. All of those things can happen on Uranus's watch. But you know what else happens here with Uranus in the 11th house? Remember what I was talking about earlier about this idea of the higher self? And that's another um, uh, facet of Uranus in the 11th house, is the need to, you know, get in touch with your higher self and to recognize in events that happen to you and exchanges that you might find yourself in, the ability to continue to rise above, to get higher and look at what's going on from that perspective, will make huge changes in your life and your interactions with other people and the way you lead your life. So this actually, Leo, is a really, really important passage for you. It can make all the difference in the world, from the struggle that you may have had in a way to be who you are and to be successful and to be all those things that Leo is very ambitious about, to suddenly realizing none of that really matters. There are a lot of other things that matter. And Uranus in Gemini and the 11th house brings that into your consciousness. Virgo. Well, of course, this is very interesting because, as I pointed out in the chart of Uranus into Gemini, and as you can see in this one that's on the screen right now for you, the nodal axis, the place where eclipses are taking place, is on the Virgo Pisces axis. So you are in a period, and have been really since the start of 2025, at a period where things have happened to you. You could say, oh, that was extraordinary. That was fate. I shouldn't have been in that place at that time. Or that happened just at a time when, you know, how we think about things that we never intended to happen, but they've happened, and it's partly to do with where we are at the time. So we've now got Uranus in Gemini. And as you know from looking at the connection between the Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, this is all a big, big resonance that's saying, you know what, so much is happening in your world and in the world out there that you have no option but to change fundamental aspects of your existence. So we look at Uranus in the 10th house and we think straight away about career. We think about your life aspirations. We think about your place in the world, which means your social standing. It means how you are when you're out on the world stage with other people around you. So if we look at the idea of career, first of all, there will be big career changes in these next 7 years. And depending, for instance, if you're an early Virgo, which means you've got an August birthday, those changes are going to happen sooner than later. 0 degrees, 1, 2 degrees of Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, these are all the 4 points, if you like, at which if you've got planets, then there is going to be a change. And with Uranus from a solar perspective in your 10th house, it is likely to manifest as your career. Now, if you don't have a career, you don't have a job, and it doesn't interest you, you know, that's not where it's at anymore, there are still changes in your outlook, where you live, how you conduct your life, the way people look at you and see you. the way you mix with people in the sense of being part of a much bigger story. So not exactly politically active, but socially active, then Uranus is going to make you more aware of what we can do. And it's reminding me a little bit about the protests, for instance, that go on all over the world, where people gather in big cities with placards for something or other, and they're voting with their feet, they're protesting, they're making a difference. And we know that when we do that, our voices are stronger. So there is this sense with Uranus in the 10th house that you will not accept the way the world is, and you will not accept the way your world is. And that's good. That's consciously recognizing how Uranus is working in your life, embracing it and doing something about it. But so often we don't think like that. We don't consciously, articulate that kind of feeling, and it happens to us. So we get caught up in something that we didn't expect to be caught up with. And it's that movement or that place or that event that we've got caught up in that changes everything, or it changes our life. And again, let's think about technology. Uranus is the planet of technology. Does this mean that you're going to choose a career in technology or television? Because Uranus is a planet of television too. Or is it that they come to you, and that the world of the internet and technology lands on your doorstep? And is it that you experience a sudden fame or a sudden kind of opening to the world that you never expected? And, I was thinking even today, there was an incident where a train broke down, and in the hottest of circumstances, it was, well into the 30 degrees. And this guy, some bright spark on the train, phoned Just Eat, and he delivered water to them. But he was under a bridge, very high bridge. And so he hurled the water over the bridge, and they caught it. And I thought, wow, enterprising is that? Spirit of enterprise. And sometimes you can become a kind of famous person for throwing bottles to those who needed it. But that's the sort of thing that can happen with Uranus in your 10th house. You weren't aware that you were going to be part of something that turned you into or you went viral. Let's put that in the vernacular that we use these days. But I think too, your views of the material world will change. Oh, let's say you could decide to get Bitcoins, because you don't want to use currency anymore. But I think it's more than that. It's like roads run out. And as you know, as we look at climate change, whether you believe it or not, there obviously is something going on, even if it's nothing to do with climate change. And of course, this is making a difference with the foods we eat, all the things that we've taken for granted. So Uranus here also means you're going to have to live in a world that is doing things differently. And that maybe that's the call to arms that should happen right from the beginning of Uranus in Gemini, is that you need to get to see how you can live in a sustainable way or in a different kind of way, because old roads are running out. And that's the first thing I think about is, how we might change the way we live, and our material world changes accordingly. Okay, Virgo? Libra. Well, of course, Uranus is moving into a fellow air sign, Gemini. So it's at a very, very nice angle from your sun sign. But more importantly, it's in the 9th solar house. And the 9th solar house, with just one description, is far horizons. So we could look at this and think about travel. You're going to travel a lot and unexpectedly. Or we could think of it another way and think that journeys will be the source of unexpected events. So just play around with that kind of language, and it will apply to you at some point. And especially if you've got anything at 0 degrees of the mutable signs, that's Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo, then you're likely to get this message sooner than later. Now, of course, the 9th house is about experience, it's about knowledge, it's about discovery. So Uranus is in its ideal place here because you will make profound and unexpected discoveries. Now, there's a whole gamut there of what that means. Is it discoveries about yourself? Is it discoveries about the world you live in? Is it discoveries about your family and the people you know? It could be anything, but you're on a voyage of discovery with Uranus in the 9th house. And I think I'd like to use that term because it's a really good one. If you don't listen to anything else I'm going to say, Libra, and you think, oh, I'm done with this video, I need a rest, then you're left with this idea of Uranus in the 9th house being a voyage of discovery. Now, things will change. The way you think about people, the way you think about life, you'll have a different outlook. And of course, you may get a different outlook because you'll move somewhere, and when you look out of your window, things look differently. But it's, more profound than that. And it means your outlook will change in terms of your opinions. But it's also your spiritual outlook. So it may mean you may undergo profound religious change. You may get religion, or you may decide, I'm not religious anymore. I'm looking for a more profound truth, or, but something related to your relationship with God, for want of a better word. But, however we think of where we fit spiritually into a cosmic pattern, cosmology, however it is to you, then there will be changes. There could be enlightenment. There could be a Damascus moment. And of course, we've got 7 years here. It's not all going to happen, between now and Christmas. But it may do. It depends whether, Uranus is going to pick up anything in your natal chart. And I would say that if you're interested in astrology, and I've got to presume you are because you're here listening to me, that this would be a very good time to take your interest a lot further and start to really understand astrology. Uranus is the planet of astrology, and developing your interest in this is a good thing to do, because astrology is just such a wonderful map. It's a wonderful kind of guide to life and all those things. So that may have greater meaning to you as well. We can also look at the fact that if you work in 9th house professions, which might mean law, for instance, which might mean academia, it might mean the teaching, broadcasting, publishing, then you might find that your industry changes so radically. Well, you might want to stay in it as long as you can adapt to the changes, but on the other hand, you might not, and you want to not go with the new systems that are in place. And I think sometimes, of course, once we change our outlook and our opinions change, so much about the rest of our life changes that we can't necessarily fit into it anymore. So that can equally well apply. But it is in a good place for you, Libra. It is. And I think it will open up your world and open you up as a person. But of course, it's got 7 years to play itself out, so to speak. So there's no need to panic if by Christmas nothing particular has changed your outlook. Scorpio. Well, of course, Scorpio, you've had Uranus in your opposite sign for 7 years. And because that means it's been in your 7th solar house, the area of relationships, you've probably been through quite a lot of upsets with relationships, whether you had love affairs that have come out of nowhere, they're very passionate, they're intense, you get involved, and they just break up just as quickly. You may have met more than your fair share of commitment phobes, or had more than your fair share of relationship breakups. Or maybe you weathered the course with a partner who was very different from you or from the norm, and you weathered the storms of those 7 years, and now you're ready for Uranus to give its lightning effect in a whole other area of your life. And this means, first and foremost, finances. Now, the eighth house and its opposite number, the second house, that is the financial axis of your horoscope. Whereas the second house tends to be how you earn your money and the control you have over your money. The eighth house is more about how money comes to you from other people and the financial relations that you have. And straight off the bat, if you're married or you're in a long-term relationship, you will have shared financial resources. I mean, that's what happens. You pool your money in some cases. So Uranus here can bring changes. So maybe it's a change in a partner's income, so that either it could be a great change, so that suddenly you find yourself with more money than you had before, or it could be the other way around, find yourself with less money. But the important thing is that this is a sharing part of the horoscope. So it is about joint responsibility for finances. We can also look at this area of the chart and think you unexpectedly come into money. That could mean you get an inheritance, you get a settlement, or you could win the lottery. I mean, who knows? Uranus comes in all sorts of guises. And we've got 7 years for this to play out. So there's a long enough time. And maybe it would be an opportunity for you to occasionally play the lottery, just to see whether Uranus will come up trumps and deliver its promise. But I think also there can be upsets with our financial partners. So if you're in business, then your financial affiliates or those kind of connections, they can be prone to the 3 Bs, breakups and bust-ups and breakdown of communication, but also breakthroughs as well. But we need to be careful of our financial partners when we've got Uranus in the 8th house. And it is the same in a way with the relations we have with banks and credit card companies and any investments when we may have. It's a time when things are not consistent, things are volatile, and it's going to be very difficult to know whether you are necessarily doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And you can't, in a way, make a decision without someone else being part of that decision, and that makes it more complicated. So given that we've got 7 years we're looking at with Uranus in this 8th house, as long as you remember that at some point there is going to be either an opportunity for you to make money, to do things differently, to make more of your assets, to partner up with someone and for the purposes of revenue or whatever it may be, as long as you think that in the background, you will be fine. The same thing with if things don't go well, then the chances are that someone may pull the plug on you financially. So it doesn't mean that you have to worry every day that that's going to happen. But it does mean when things are getting a little tight, or you can see there are some issues with your financial partners, banks, whatever, you start negotiating, and you negotiate from a position where you're very easy to negotiate with. Otherwise, people will pull the plug on you very quickly. And I think also this area of the horoscope has a lot to do with intimacy. So I think some Scorpios are going to be awoken to a level of intimacy with someone that they've never had before. And that's going to change everything. And Uranus offers much, and we get wonderful things from this planet in the sense of breakthroughs and lightning epiphanies. They're beautiful. And certainly, as most of us need intimacy in some regard, if you haven't had it, then Uranus will awaken you to that factor. And even if you think you've had it, there are new areas where Uranus can take you. And of course, this is one of the mystical houses as well. So you may find that you do get some very extraordinary, profound experiences. But what I would say is not a good idea is joining a cult or getting into magic or doing anything like that, because that could prove to be dangerous. Okay. Sagittarius, wow, Uranus in your seventh house, your seventh solar house. Well, this is all about relationships. And when we think about relationships, it's not just about romantic relationships, marriages. It can be relationships with co-workers. It can be relationships even with the family. And it can be relationships with companies. So Uranus is always going to show you something you didn't know about yourself, but also about other people. So this can be a time of enlightenment. And again, depending on whether you've got planets at 0 to 2 degrees of the mutable signs, that's Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces, and Virgo, you know, you won't feel the Uranus effect until it connects with something. But if you do have something at 1 or 2 degrees of those signs, then it's going to be in your face right away. And it is an awakening to love, an awakening to true partnership. But it can also be, remember those 3 Bs, breakups, bust-ups, breakdowns, and, well, actually I've said bust-ups and breakups are the same thing, but also breakthroughs. So keep that fairly, in front of your mind when you're getting into relationships, because we can look at, what's going on here in the 7th house and think, I'm going to be opened up to very new and exciting experiences in the company of other people. It can mean that you are more attracted to people who are different in some way, different from you or different from the norm. There can be different age groups. So you may find someone much younger than you very attractive, or someone much older than you attractive. Or you might find someone from a different culture, ethnicity comes into your life. This is also where we find our mentors as well, and our gurus. And with Uranus, that's also a sort of guru type kind of image. Then somebody may come into your life during these 7 years that Uranus will be passing through here that will act as a great mentor to you. And that will open up your world and open up new possibilities. But I think you also have to be aware that Uranus, it will also get rid of things you don't need and things that you've outgrown. And it is more the emphasis on growing out of something rather than you discarding something like a wet dishcloth. It isn't like that. It's like you've grown in a different way. And that means that some aspects of your existence are no longer, right for you, which means friendships can go. It means, if you are attached or signed up to a company, that you may walk out of the company. Or it may be a marriage or a long-term relationship that goes by the by. And sometimes with Uranus, it is the need for something different. So we get the idea that one or both partners is looking for something different in the relationship, so they're looking outside it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't come back together again after some kind of break or some kind of upset in the relationship. And sometimes you'll come back stronger and better because of what you've encountered. So I don't want you to worry every day of your life if right now, well, your life going forward for the next 7 years, because you love your other half, or you're in a very happy situation work-wise or whatever else it may be, and you think, oh gosh, it's all going to fall apart at the seams. No, it's not, but it will change. And relationships are organic things. They must change and evolve. And that's what you have to be aware of, in a way, to be aware when change needs to happen in your relationships, and to change and adapt before things become tense and fractious. But there's a lot to learn. You're going to have some exciting times over these next 7 years, Sagittarius. Look forward to it. Okay. Capricorn. Uranus is entering your 6th solar house. Now, this is a very interesting area of the horoscope, and I spend a lot of time when I'm teaching about the sixth house, because when we first learn astrology, we're told, oh, this is the area of work and health. And you think, how do these two things go together? How can it be work and health? Well, the uniting principle is that the sixth house is the engine of the horoscope. It's the engine, it keeps everything going. And if you have a job, the money that comes in keeps you going and the family going and the house going. And also, if your health is good, it keeps you going and everything going. And it's about systems, it's about things that we need to have running well. So Uranus comes to town in the sixth house and everything changes, so that things break down. Now, they break down for a purpose because they need to be changed or they need to be built in a new way. So you will find during the next 7 years that you are somehow constantly redoing things, rebuilding something, taking it apart and trying again. So your routines will change. The way you think about your health, will change. So you may start out with Uranus in Gemini and you go to the gym every day, or you don't go to the gym, you're on a high protein diet, whatever it may be. And suddenly as Uranus gets into Gemini, you think, you know what? I'd like to do something different. So you change your routine, you change your approach to health. But of course, because this is a health system generally, you need to be more alert to the signals that your body is sending you. So that's mental health, physical health. If you notice a difference, you're going to have to respond to it, check it out, get it done. Your reaction to medication may be different. You've used the same medication for years. Suddenly Uranus comes into the sixth house and, oh, no, it doesn't work anymore. Doesn't go your way. Being this as the workplace, the sixth house, you may find that there's a lot of change going on in your working situation. And if you work in an office, for instance, lots of toing and froing, changes, maybe even a whole new workplace. But if you don't work in a workplace, you still have work, it may mean that there are changes about your work that means you yourself are going to work differently. And certainly with Uranus here, it screams technology. If you haven't, got got in touch with the new digital systems, then this is something you need to do right from the get-go. Uranus demands in this area that we use the technology that's available to us and we get tech savvy with things. I think also this is a very spiritual house because it is the 6-12th axis. It's really about a life purpose. So you could have your Damascus moment. There's suddenly a realization, this is what I'm here for. This is what I need to be doing. And that it's probably going to be aligned with a sense of service, because this is also a very sixth house thing, that you want to be of service in some way. You can be of service to your fellow man, you can be of service in a bigger context, whatever it is, but that's the theme of the sixth house. And I think, most people who are listening to me because you're interested in astrology also have a spiritual perspective on life, and therefore the idea of Uranus coming into the sixth house is a spiritual awakening. And it may happen in stages, it may not be the Damascus moment as such, but it could be just a series of incidents that really do open your eyes to your spiritual framework. And you may have experiences every bit as much as, the 12th house will do that as well. Out-of-body experiences, seeing things, and actually, given that this is the sixth house of help, I think if you do start seeing things, while they may be genuinely psychic experiences, it's always good to make sure that you're not hallucinating. So Uranus in the sixth house always sends up warnings about making sure your health is well. But as we know, we who work in the spiritual realm, there are things that don't meet with the criteria that everyone else might expect. And we do see apparitions. We do have great a sense of premonitions, things like this. And our dreams can be very, very vivid, just as they can with Uranus in the 12th house as well. So lots of things about Uranus going through this area. For 6 whole years, you're going to have a big, huge range of experience. All of it Capricorn, good, because Capricorn can be a little cautious about new things, a little bit cautious about doing things a different way. But really, the way forward is, new technology, new ways of looking at things, incorporating your spiritual experiences, finding your purpose. These are all things that are going to change your life. Okay, Capricorn. Aquarius. Wow, Aquarius, your ruling planet is always important wherever it moves to and wherever it makes a connection to in terms of other planets in your natal chart in its transits. So Uranus has now come into the 5th solar house. And if you've got Aquarius rising, you're looking at Uranus in the 5th house. And Uranus in Gemini, Gemini is one of your fellow air signs. So it works very well here. Now, Uranus is a great risk taker. And its properties inspire risks, let's put it that way. Uranus isn't a person, so how can it be a risk taker? But it inspires you to be a little bit more capable of taking a chance. And I think, too, when we look at this 5th house, it's a very creative area of the horoscope. So it can mean that you suddenly decide you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to do something of your own. And it might also mean that not necessarily immediately or, for the full gamut of 7 years, but it could be that you get your moment in the sun, that somehow you do something that becomes notable. You're in a spotlight. People pay attention to you. So Uranus is bringing out something in you that's meant to be, and it could make you right in the center of something at the time that happens. Creativity is also babies, producing babies. So depending on how old you are and your situation in life, then Uranus can inspire a pregnancy. And sometimes, because it's Uranus, it's very unexpected. You didn't expect to get pregnant. You didn't expect to become a father or a mother or a grandparent, but here you are, unexpectedly, a parent. And it can also indicate an exceptional child, or it can indicate one of your children is going to do something exceptional during the time that Uranus is moving through the sign of Gemini and your 5th house. It's also a time to try something you've never done before. I mean, Uranus always asks that, invites us to do things that we haven't done before. But I think here it's much more in the line of getting physically involved. It isn't just mentally taking a risk, it's also physical. So you might suddenly decide, you know what, I want to climb, I want to learn how to climb, I want to learn how to water ski, I want to do things, I want to pit myself against the elements. And that's very Uranus in the 5th house. And of course, we need to be careful that we don't do anything that damages ourselves. But hey, no risk, no reward. But that may be something you need to pin above or on your fridge or on your desk or above your bed. No risk, no reward, because that's what Uranus is inviting you to do over the course of these next 7 years. If something carries a risk, but the payoff for that could be fabulous, it's worth taking a risk. And even if it doesn't work out as you had hoped, you're going to learn so much. And you're really going to learn that you can take a risk, which means that you're prepared to take more risks as you go forward in life. Life is a risk, really and truly. And I think that's above and beyond all what Uranus is teaching you. It's also going to teach you something about love and love affairs. And it may be that you have this love affair that you didn't expect to have, and there's a very unexpected outcome from that love affair. And that the people you're going to be attracted to are a little bit different from the ones you might have gone for before. That's all part of the Uranus experience. It's taking you into places that you've never been. And there are aspects of yourself that are being woken up. And remember, the fifth house is the area of the self. So being awoken to things about yourself that you didn't know about, that's definitely Uranus's job as it moves through the fifth house. Pisces, Uranus for you is moving to the very, very base of your horoscope. And this is one of the most important areas of the horoscope. It is the roots of life. It is your home, your family, everything that provides stability in your life. And it's a sanctuary, the fourth house. It's a sense of everything that is instinctively yourself and what you've always known. You don't have to think about the bedrock of your life. So here we go. We've got Uranus, the change bringer, at the bedrock of your chart. So it is going to bring change, and it's got 7 years to do it in. And so it isn't going to be 7 years, day in, day out, of change at the bedrock of your life. No, of course it's not. But there will be one occasion at least where things will really change big time for you. Now, it could be very practical in a way, and we could be thinking about moving house, but not just moving house, but moving to a whole other area, changing state, moving to a different country, so that really, really is a big change. And if you're listening to me and you're thinking, I've always wanted to do this, then I think Uranus gives you the opportunity to embrace that change that you want to bring about yourself. But of course, this is also about your family. So there's something happening within the family that is very unexpected. Does this mean that perhaps you're going to have a new baby joining the clan, a new baby coming into the family? Or is it a new member of the family by marriage? Or are you going to adopt or foster a child? You could do with Uranus in the fourth. Or are you going to turn your home into a business? Are you going to work from home? Are you going to offer up your home for some kind of Uranian experience? So it becomes a meeting place or a place of self-sufficiency, a place where people come to learn something. You may, it may. These are all very Uranian things. But you have to change with Uranus. I mean, things can't be the same. I mean, you may stay in the same home that you've always been in, but things within the home will change, whether that's to do with your family or whether it's to do with how the home looks, whether you knock a few walls down and, change something within the home itself. But sometimes, of course, there can be, looking at these 3B words, breakups, breakdowns, and of course, breakthroughs, which are great. But there could be a breakdown of family life for one reason or another. And this might be because of circumstances, the way the world works and jobs and people leaving to go to other countries, all sorts of things that change the dynamics of family life. But there could also be family upsets, and who hasn't had a family upset? But I think the thing to remember when you've got Uranus moving through this area, if there is a family upset, it can happen very quickly and it can be quite devastating. So what you need to do is always be aware of signs and signals that something's going on in the family, and to try to address it and deal with it before it becomes something that can no longer be prevented or really negotiated. It's already happened. And it may be, again, that a member of the family gets divorced, or a member of the family moves to another country or another place, so that you're feeling that your roots of life are a little bit less firm than they once were. But it's an opportunity as well. Every obstacle is an opportunity. And this means that you get an opportunity to lead a different kind of home life. Now, this may translate as buying a camper van and moving around the country for a period of time, going on a trek of some description, taking your home with you, or doing something very different, maybe teaching your own children so that you become a home teacher, or if you're listening to me, you're young enough, and then you're going to be home taught for a while. So there are all these sort of possibilities that stem from Uranus here. And the other thing is, of course, because this is your ancestral roots, they go way, way back. At some point in these 7 years, you will make a discovery about your ancestry. There will be something that will happen that you didn't know you had or wasn't in there, and it's going to be revelatory. It's going to change everything. And one other point about Uranus here is that we do become aware of who we want to be with Uranus in the fourth house, and that if we suddenly feel like a square peg in a round hole with our family or with our family unit, it may be the call to find our tribe. And of course, we can find our tribe in so many different ways. And I think with Uranus in the fourth, it offers you that potential to find your tribe. Okay, Pisces? Aries. Uranus moving into Gemini means Uranus is moving into the third solar house. And if you've got Aries rising, Uranus moving into the third house. And this is all about outlook. And outlook is everything. Our outlook on life means that's how life runs. It's that important. Our mindset, the way we interpret events, the way we communicate, the way we look at what's going on in our world, especially our small world, that's to say our town, our city, our neighborhood, that's a very important part of our life. And becoming more aware of what's going on around us in our small world is what Uranus will do. Uranus will activate us and make us aware of our surroundings. And of course, this may make you quite an activist at this time. If you find in your neighborhood, for instance, that they're going to put a one-way system through, you might think, oh, no, they're not. And so you get involved in a movement to make sure that your neighborhood is in a great way. You may have unusual neighbors. Now, maybe you'll love that. Maybe new neighbors will turn out to be amazing because they're so different, and you'll love that. On the other hand, maybe you'll have a serious upset with your neighbors or one of your neighbors. These are all things to be aware of when Uranus is moving through the third house. And remember, it's going to do so for 7 years. So there's a lot of possibilities here, lots of different things. Now, of course, it may mean that you change your outlook, you change where you are. So you will move. I know we think about the fourth house as moving home, but Uranus in the third house can do it as well, because we're going to change our outlook. We look out of the window at a different place. But it's also about being awoken to things. And this can be a very political area of the horoscope, so that even if before this time you haven't really been interested in local politics or really interested in what's going on in different parts of the world, you're likely to be more interested. You're likely to pay more attention. And you're much more likely to want to get engaged in social media discussions. It's the time when you think, you know what, I'm going to have my own YouTube channel. I'm going to have my own website. I'm going to do something, because, of course, Uranus is very, technological. It's about the internet. It's about all those things. And so being awoken to the possibility that you have to have your own website, to do things digitally, to work, digitally and remotely. These are all possibilities with Uranus here. And it's also learning something new. And this is very good for our brains anyway. And we hear more and more about this, especially as we age, learning a new language, learning a new technique, learning how to do something you haven't done before. This is all very good for our brain health. And I think with Uranus in the third house, this is a really good time to get brain healthy. And what you also need to be aware of, because this is about mindset, that you need to have good mental health. And if you do too much, and so you get burnout, you need to be careful with Uranus in the third house that you don't get burnt out. I mean, there's not a lot you could do about it if you do, except, learn how to get through to the other side of it. But if you realize that you're doing too much, you're exhausting your brain and your anxiety levels are up, you have to say to yourself, stop this, take a break. And if you take several breaks, and I would recommend this, Aries, because you are someone who likes to do a lot of stuff. I think if you trim your schedule and take frequent breaks away from your environment and what you usually do, it's going to be terribly good for you. Whereas I think if you stay the same in the same place, doing the same thing, exhausting yourself, you are going to run into a wall at some point. And that's very much to be aware of Uranus in the third house. So the other thing I think that I want to talk about here as well is that astrology comes into, is a very Uranian thing. Uranus is the planet of astrology. And this might be, maybe you, because you're listening to me, you're already interested in astrology, but maybe you could use this in a way that becomes much more part of your life. And you will have more of an aptitude for astrology as you, with Uranus in your third house. And not just astrology. We're thinking about things that are a little offbeat or a little complex or even a little digital, that you'll have a greater aptitude for it. Now, there's another thing about Uranus here, and it is about travel. It means two things. You may travel a lot, maybe not huge, vast distances, not to Australia and back to LA, not those kind of distances, although you might, but it's more like you're constantly on the go. You're constantly making journeys. And those journeys in and of themselves are mind expanding, mind changing. So whether it's where you go and what happens to you there, or the journey itself, there's something about movement and travel that's going to change your outlook, going to happen to you, that's very different from the norm. Now, remember, we've got 7 years for all this to happen, so it's not going to happen all in one day. Have to remember all the things that I've told you, and only when Uranus makes a connection with your sun or with other planets and points are you going to have the Uranus effect. But that Uranus effect will, at some level, be about your outlook and your mindset. Those are the two most important things, and they will be changing. Okay, Aries? Last sign I'm coming to is Taurus. And Uranus, of course, has been in your sign for 7 years. So in a kind of way, you're going to be breathing a sigh of relief and saying, oh, I can relax, put my feet up. I don't have to keep changing. But of course, Uranus hasn't left the solar system. It's moved on, and it's moved on into your second house, which is the area of self-worth. So Uranus here is about doing things in a different way, which of course, because it's about self-worth, translates as finances as well. You may do a different job. So you get your money through doing a different job. You may decide to be more entrepreneurial, to have your own business, to join a startup, to do something that means you're income isn't regular, like it's a paycheck every month or every week or however you get paid. What it is it depends on sales, or it depends on what your product and your work is, that it doesn't follow a normal course. Some weeks there's plenty of money, and some weeks, no, it's a bit dry. And of course, there are lots of businesses that go with this. Hospitality, for instance, seasonal businesses, things like that. If you're in the Christmas business, yeah, you're busy and making money one part of the year, and the rest not so much. So your income fluctuates, your income will change. Now, I know that's difficult for Taurus because you like things to be consistent. Consistency is your middle name. But you've got to learn how to adapt, because the potential to do very, very well with Uranus in the second house, as far as money and investments go, property as well, is quite great. It's unusual, it's unexpected, but you can do really, really well. And yes, all right, so maybe the rug will get pulled out from underneath you on occasion, and you won't get what you thought you were getting, and there will be upsets over money. But looked at over a 7-year period, I promise you, Taurus, you're going to come out richer than you started. And part of that is the ability to take a risk. And Uranus, no, I said this, I think, to Capricorn. I said Uranus is the risk taker, but actually Uranus isn't a person, it's a planet, and it symbolizes things, and its properties inspire such things. So what Uranus inspires is the ability to take a risk. And, there is no risk without reward. No, that's wrong. There is no reward without risk. And I think Taurus can often be very reluctant to take a leap of faith. And there's one thing I can assure you, over this 7-year period, you will be taking a leap of faith, and it probably has a financial aspect to it. But that's the invitation. That is what Uranus is offering you, that chance to say, you know what, I'm going to go for this. Now, the other thing is also about Uranus, and the second house is about how you view yourself, your self-worth. And there is a new way to look at who you are. And that can come from suddenly realizing you've outgrown certain aspects of your existence. And actually, that's a good thing when we recognize that. You've outgrown that and it doesn't fit you anymore. And in fact, you can do this quite literally by going to your wardrobe and putting something on and thinking, I've outgrown this. It doesn't look right anymore. But that's a metaphor for the fact that you will have outgrown situations. And these situations may have been fundamental to your stability in life, but they're not working anymore. They need replacing. There need to be new ways. So when you sense something is not working anymore, Taurus, obviously, first of all, we do try to fix it. It's perfectly normal. But if once you've fixed it, it still doesn't work, then you really have to say to yourself, this is obsolete, and I need a new way to do this. I need a new way to work in my life, to be who I am, to project who I am, what I have to offer the world. This all needs changing, and I have to go with something new. And that ability to have that great faith in yourself that you can adapt to things is very important. Uranus is going to teach you how to be adaptable. And that's a very, very useful practice in all of life. If we can adapt to new circumstances quickly and easily, life is smoother. If we're always trying to block things and stop things changing and wanting to have things done the way we want them to be done, life is very uncomfortable. But learning to go with the flow, learning to accept change when it comes in and to use change to our benefit, that's what Uranus is offering you here in the second house. And your values will change as well. Maybe at one time you thought it was great to have this, that, and the other. Well, suddenly you look at all those things and you think, oh, I don't need that. I don't want that. I want something different. My values in life have changed and they need replacing. So don't be surprised if one day you wake up and think, I don't need that old picture. I don't need this. And you start cleaning out closets and getting rid of stuff and saying, I don't need this stuff anymore. I really don't need it. I need to pare down my life. And by the same token, as you do that kind of thing, as you pare down and get rid of what you don't need, that's also doing something to your psyche and to your life as well, which is saying, I can do or I need to do with different things, not these old things that are holding me back. I want a whole new life in many ways, and I'm going to get it by accepting change and by taking a leap of faith. All right, Taurus. So that is my last sign. And of course, as I go through these 12 signs, actually quite in depth, I think to myself, how often just a little phrase here and there does it, and I quite like testing myself when I write that I'll do things in a nutshell. And I think it was, Libra I was talking to, and about the fact that Uranus is in the 9th house. And I thought my little nutshell meaning for that is you're on a voyage of discovery. And I could probably do that with all 12 signs, just have a little motto, that epithet that goes with that. And the next video I do on Uranus and Gemini, which will be next year, next spring, I think I'll probably leave myself a note to do that. So yes, we've been through quite a lot. I happen to love the planet Uranus. I've been upset by it, I can assure you. It's happened. But I think by and large, what Uranus does when it sweeps in and changes everything, sometimes blows things up in your face, you have no alternative but to go in a new direction. And fundamentally, that's what Uranus wants. Uranus is offering you the world. This is a big world. Explore it. Go beyond. Always go beyond your capabilities, beyond the end of your nose. Go further. And I think once we get that about Uranus, we can live rather happily with this very, very unorthodox planet. Thank you for being with me, and I look forward to speaking to you on my next video. Bye for now.